Welcome to the Vandy Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Lee. Our guest today will be Seabass of WNWS in Jackson, Tennessee, in an episode that we recorded on Thursday afternoon. Our show is sponsored by the Well Coffee House, which turns coffee into water. The Well is a coffee house with the mission to bring clean water to the world. To date, over 30 communities across the globe have access to safe water, health, and hope. You too can make an impact by visiting a Well Coffee House today. 5 locations to serve you in the Nashville area. Those are in Brentwood, Green Hills, downtown, Bellevue, and the Cool Springs Lifeway. You can find more info at wellcoffeehouse.org. The Well Coffee House, where coffee changes lives. We also thank our co-sponsor, Wellspire, Nashville's Learning and Development Center, which is located in the Gulch. Our news is presented by Sutherland & Belk, a local injury law firm committed to helping those who've been injured in accidents. If you or someone you know has been in a wreck or other accident, reach out to Sutherland & Belk, see what your rights are. You can find their contact info online at sbinjurylaw.com. Well, basketball season is finally over. Vanderbilt falls 69-52 to Texas A&M in the SEC tournament. The Commodores finished 9-23 and end the year on a 20-game losing streak. Both those loss marks are all-time school records. In baseball, the Commodores travel to Texas A&M with a 3-game series with the Aggies. It is the SEC opening series for both teams. Our friend Seabass joins us. Thank you for joining us, my man. You've got a cold. I guess not a lot of fun stuff to talk about. I'll just say this. It is really weird thinking back to the start of the season, watching what has happened, and just thinking, we were thinking at the start of the year, this should be a lot of fun. The team is young. It could be peaking, heading into the SEC tournament. Maybe they're playing for a tournament title, maybe, in addition to NCAA seeding. And then if somebody had told you 6 months ago that this is how the season was going to end, I just keep thinking about that.
You could have got all my money. I'll tell you that much. You could have got every last dime. I'll just be the first to tell you, Chris, I 100% did not see this coming.
What's left to say?
There's actually a lot left to say. Not about this year. I mean, this season is over with. That is what it is. Last night, I thought that Yanni Wetzel proved what I've been thinking for the last couple of games, and that dude wants to win. I mean, he's been playing hard. He's going for it. He's still pretty excited about playing, man. I really like his game, and I think next year he has a chance to be a pretty nice player for this team. So, I mean, there are a few bright spots, not very many, but he is certainly one of them.
It's obvious to me that the guy on this team that I think wants to win more than anybody is Aaron Nesmith. I've even heard he, has gotten into certain teammates' business a time or two that probably needed it. That's one of the few encouraging things, I guess, that you can say is those two. I still think Saban Lee is a good player, but holy cow, what a mess.
Yeah, a little bit. You got yourself a little bit of mess, but, I guess now the only thing to talk about in regards to this program right now is the immediate future. I mean, the season's over with. It doesn't even matter anymore. Well, it matters, but there's no reason to rehash it. And the question is now, will the people that have the ability to make a decision make a decision? Do they feel like Bryce is the best thing for this program, going forward? And if not, will they have the stones to make a move? And that's what we all want to know. A, does it need to be made? B, will it be made? C, if so, who can we get? Those are big questions that are coming really soon. I think the fans are ready for that. They were ready for that to be over with, and including yours truly. If it wasn't for these podcasts, I probably wouldn't even have watched last month of the season. So yes, I'm washing my hands of this season for the rest of this year.
What do you want to talk? Pro day, spring practice? Not like I have a lot to add on spring practice because of the access, but
well, but I did see your report, so I'm asking a few questions in a second. But I will say this: I thought that that laser time 4.45 was really good news for Juwan. The length is certainly there, the playmaking ability is there, the height is there, and the speed's starting to match a little bit more. 4.55 is plenty fast enough to play quarterback in the NFL. Plenty fast enough. And as I tried to say last week, man, the length makes up for a few things, so it almost makes him even a little bit faster, and the ability to cover a bigger area. His coverage range is better. And I thought that time, I thought he really helped himself that pro day, Chris.
Yeah, I don't think it hurt for sure. The one that surprised me, I had no idea that Corey Blasingame was that athletic. Did you?
Sneakily, he is. Yeah, I mean, no, not really. When we think of Carter, we think about bruising runners and, A gap, sometimes B gap, bruising runs, kicking, getting those feet up there and and punishing linebackers. But I don't think about necessarily athleticism. But, he also, remember that screen pass he took to the house? He flashed a little bit there.
Yeah, I think about it now. I wonder how much he suffered by comparison of having Keyshawn Vaughn on the roster. Because that's who he got compared to a lot, which all but a small handful of backs in the country are going to stack up below him.
You can make the argument that he was playing behind the best running back in the SEC. And I don't think that's a stretch to say that. I know Josh Jacobs and Damian Harris and a couple of others, Jordan Scarlett, guys like that. But, I mean, I think that he was playing in a backfield that had maybe the best running back that the conference had to offer.
Hey, let's go to the mailbag. Our mailbag is sponsored by Vanderbilt Fan and independent insurance agent Josh Minton of Brentwood. Do you need an insurance agent who wants to know your unique needs and circumstances and will tailor an insurance plan to fit them? Josh is your man. Call him 615-933-1979. Email him at josh@hqinsurance.com. Follow him on Facebook at facebook.com/JDMintonHQ. He's my insurance agent. Give him a shot. I think you'll be pleased. Dusty Orleans says, what team do you think would be the best fit for Shurmur? And he's going to have that same question for Corey Chavis when I have Corey on Friday. By the way, if you caught the podcast on Wednesday, I completely whiffed in my time with Corey and forgot to ask him about Kyle Shurmur. So we've got one coming up on Friday on that. Just in case you listened to that and thought, were they making a mistake? Did they mean to leave Kyle out? No, we did not, and we're going to do another podcast on that on Friday with Corey. But Dusty wants to know your opinion on Shurmur and where he fits.
First of all, let's talk about not teams. We'll get to that, but position draft-wise. I still think 5. For some reason, 5 is the number that I have for Kyle Shurmur. I think he's somewhere in the 5th round. As far as a particular pro or organization that he would go to, when I think about Kyle in his draft status, I don't really picture Kyle as a starter in the NFL, situationally maybe, but, I don't really see him going somewhere as a starter. I think you would have to go somewhere where you have, and again, he's flashed more athleticism than we thought with his forward, but it is still what it is. I think he would thrive much better in an offense that has a pretty stabilized offensive line. And I know that sounds general, but you know what I mean. His capability there's a price tag for that. So I think it needs to be somewhere where the offensive line is kind of established. So to see him in a pro-style offense. It's a great question. Maybe somewhere like a Green Bay, Chris, or a Minnesota. Somewhere like that. Maybe he's backing up. He's fighting for the backup spot. And, I think it needs to be a team that carried 3. Let's say Minnesota, Chris. How about that?
Green Bay would be great, or New England, or somewhere where maybe he did not have to have the pressure of being the guy and could develop a little bit. I guess that's ideal for everybody other than like a first rounder, but something like that.
Well, and I don't know that New England would carry 3 quarterbacks. I mean, they might. That's kind of a philosophy from franchise to franchise. Some teams don't believe in carrying 3.
Yeah. Let's see. Next question from the Superior. What's one thing you'd work on most for the football defense?
Boy, that's a good question. There's 2 things that I think we both have great concerns about, one, the ability to have effective pass rush, and someone besides Dio with his length, they're going to have to find a way, get pressure on the quarterback. But I don't know, Chris. I think the thing that has frustrated Vanderbilt fans over the last couple of years the most is the inability to stop simple A and B gap runs that gash us in all types of situations, even in things like, we've faced offenses who are coming out and running, a B gap blast on 3rd and 9 and getting the first down and breaking a defense's back, that's what that does. So I really want to get some pressure on the quarterbacks here in the league this year. But I think more than anything, man, that interior run defense, I think, is, for me, not personnel-wise, but just something that we need to effectively work on. That would have to be number one for me. What about you?
I did not have an answer in mind, but after hearing yours, I think that's it. That's something they've struggled with for 2 or 3 years now. And if you can't stop that, you will get bludgeoned with it in the SEC, as teams have proven the last couple of years.
I mean, it's the worst way to get beat, It's an area of concern. But like I said, so is pass rush. I mean, we need it. We need it. We need it. We need it. We don't have it, man. It can be a long Saturday this season, and it's going to be putting a lot of pressure on our offense. I don't want to play track meet. I think we have the ability, if our offensive line can get anything going, I think we have the ability to play track meet, but I'd rather not have to.
Okay, not surprisingly, there are some basketball questions in here. The Superior says, have you considered going back to watch a replay of one of the early hoops games? The ones where Garland was dealing, Chateau was flying and slamming, Ryan was draining threes, and we looked like a contender.
Why would I do that, man? I mean, it just hurts too much, Chris. I mean, I know that sounds stupid, but I say why would I do that? Because I'm just not willing to put myself through that. I know what we lost. I know what we missed out on. At least give the opportunity to see. I mean, I guess is the question being phrased that, maybe this isn't all a Bryce Drew thing, and had that not happened, Bryce would be in a different situation? Yeah, maybe. But it did, and he is. I'm not going back to watch. I know what we missed. It sucks. I hate it. I mean, I love the 4 games that we got to see it, but, no. But the only other thing about it is, as I'll say, that's a lot of pressure on one player because, he's projected to be a top 5 player. But, I mean, is he going to be the difference in all those guys? I know we talk about spreading the floor out, being able to find shots and whatnot, but, I mean, you're talking about 4 or 5 players would have to be significantly better to even consider winning about 5 or 6 SEC games at this point. Same time, one could also say they got their back broken that game against Tennessee, and they never recovered. They never looked the same. They weren't good before that, but at least you could see some type of rhyme or reason. And I think after that game, it got broke. But yeah, I'm not going back to watch that.
I remember watching the opener, and I think everybody was mesmerized by the show. I remember thinking in the back of my head, hey, there's some issues here with valuing possession and discipline and things like that. But I think it was such a show that everybody kind of overlooked that. So I think that, yeah, that's a great point. I really do think it changed everything. I mean, Matt Ryan was a different player on that offense. Simi Chateau certainly was. It's almost like I was thinking today, the answer to every question related to basketball, if you say, hey, was this a factor, and throw in whatever, the answer is like always yes. It's like there was a lot of stuff that contributed to this. Coaching, player development, the injury, administrative commitment. I mean, you name it, and there's a ton of things in there to blame.
The other question I have, though, is, Chris, somebody has to pay for 0-18. Yeah, 0-19 technically, and then 20 straight. Somebody's got to answer for that. There has to be somebody that answers to that, I think. And I don't know what that fully means. I mean, I don't know if that means with their job. We can't just not address it and say, next year hopefully we'll be better, because I think right now you're going to have a very difficult time convincing people to show up.
Yeah, I don't think that what they are trying is going to work. I think that if Bryce is going to stay here and make it, there's going to have to be some, yeah, we screwed this up, and yes, we screwed that up, and yes, we got some things that we need to learn from here. I mean, and even then, can you change who you are? Can you change what you want to do? I don't know the answers to those questions, but even with the injuries, going at it the way they did this year is not going to work. And B, man, that's part of life. That was a severe blow. I get that, but it's not like we all get to say, "Hey, here's how I'm going to live my life. Everything's going to go my way every day. I don't have to roll with the punches. I just get to live in the perfect world the way that I had it drawn up in my head and live with it that way." That's part of coaching.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's why when people ask me, do I think they need to make a move? I think the answer is yeah. It's not a personal thing, and I'm not going to lambaste the guy, but how do you get progressively worse the entire time and then have no answer for anything? You know, I don't know that he knew what to do. I think he said that he tried everything he could, but he had no answers at all of any kind. And watching this team play, it's one thing to not have the talent. It's quite another to just be a comedy of errors that just the likes that you're not used to seeing in Power 5 basketball. I mean, I get when the shot doesn't go down, but just the level of basketball IQ at times, and the things that they did not mimic that of a team who even been coached averagely. And that's not even a word. From an average coach, what I saw there was a team who was completely clueless. And that sucks. That's the hardest thing to sell. A team that was clueless. And, now I will give this, even though things went wrong, I will say this, there are still a couple players on that team that still gave everything they had every night, every week. I think Cleveland Brown's one of those guys. You mentioned Aaron Neesmith. There's no question. I think Donnie Wetzel did that. I just think we're limited here, and I don't think he has the answers. And so I'm supposed to believe that over the summer, he's supposed to develop the answers. And because how many times have you and I had the same conversation, Chris, about coaches are who they are? They don't change. Some personnel might change here and there, but they don't change philosophically. Bryce Drew is going to be the exact same coach that he was last year. Now, we can talk about facilities, give him what he needs, and all this other stuff. That's one thing. But he showed me a complete inability to make adjustments. One thing, not be able to do it in the first month or so to get things going, but he never, ever did it. And that's hard for me to accept and to recognize that and still say, yes, this is the person to get this program where they want to go. And if I'm wrong, I'm great. I mean, I don't lose anything by being wrong. If I'm wrong, then that means that everything's working out. But I don't think I'm wrong.
I think there were three things that really bothered me this season, one of which was that I never really heard him take ownership at a press conference. And again, all those things were factors, and they're different things. Like, okay, if he can't say at some point, and I never heard him say it, hey, we could have managed this better. We could have disciplined kids better. We could have used the bench as a motivating tool and played walk-ons, even if it costs us a game. Maybe it sends the message that we want to get things headed in the right direction. Never once did I hear him at a press conference really take a lot of ownership of anything. That bothered me the most. And the other thing is, like, when you think of Vanderbilt teams historically, Seabass, two things come to mind. You play intelligently, and you can always shoot the basketball, and they were miserable in both those regards this year.
It's a head scratcher because they shouldn't be. Those first two free throws last night in the game by Saban Lee were two of the worst looking free throws that I've seen in a long time. And it's not even so much form, but they were just such claims, start things out. And I was like, man, is this really the same team that I'm used to watching shoot free throws over the years? But, I like Saban. I do. I love Saban. He's a lot of fun to watch. He's explosive. He plays hard. He had a little bit of trouble finishing at times around the rim, but I'm not going to get on Saban about much because I think he's a hard bat. He plays hard, and he's really trying, and he's super fast. But, yeah, those free throws, man, It makes no sense. And the weird part about that is, Chris, think about this. Now, you and I both know Bryce Drew covers free throw shooting. They practice it all the time. What's going on? You know what I mean? I mean, you know they shoot free throws every single day. Lots of them. It's one thing if I got a team that can't create their own shot. I understand that. We just don't have a lot of guys who can create their own shot. But we should have the guys that can at least hit the dead free throws.
There were so many should-haves with regards to execution this year. I sat there courtside last night, and I watched them on offense, and I'm just like, I don't know what they're trying to do. I mean, they get Matt Ryan or somebody to pop out 25 feet from the goal and set a ball screen for Simi Chateau or not for Chateau, but for Saban or somebody, and he acts like he's going to pull up and take a jumper from there. I just didn't see them doing anything to get anybody open, to get backdoor cuts. People have really criticized them for lack of any kind of plan on offense. And I know that when you run like a dribble drive offense, it looks like roll the ball out there, and that may not always be the case. But honest to God, I can't tell you the difference between what roll the ball out there and whatever it was they were supposed to be doing was last night.
Yeah, I wish I had an answer for you, but I don't either. I really just saw no rhyme or reason. The thing about it was A&M, I mean, they were begging for Vanderbilt to be in that game. I think A&M was just locked down defensively. We couldn't get anything going. I mean, they're okay, but just it was a true lack of anybody being able to create their own shot or at least to dribble, drive, and draw some penetration because I think teams starting to realize they're not going to finish. There's a real good chance they're going to turn the ball over on this dribble drive, and it happened way too much. I mean, they got behind a little bit early in the turnover game. I think they had, what was it, Chris, 7 turnovers like the first 7-8 minutes of the game.
Do you know how many times this year I sat there while I was writing stories and it would get to the second half and it's like, you're right ahead of time and you're like, they had X amount of turnovers to X amount of field goals. So many times they would get into the second half and they would have more turnovers than they had field goals. And that's atrocious.
I mean, that's one of those things that should almost never happen. You know what I mean? Especially not multiple times. It should not ever happen. But, hopefully next year we'll have a little bit more depth at point guard. And that brings up on another question, Chris. What happens if Vanderbilt does make a move here? And you got these 3 signees that I mean, do I understand this right? Would be free to do whatever they wanted to do should their coach leave?
I would think so. I haven't thought that far ahead.
Well, you may have to, because if that happens, who knows? I mean, you're looking at a whole new staff, and you just never know. But I mean, that would be an issue. The reason I bring that up is because we have absolutely no depth whatsoever of any kind. And I think Disu and Scottie Pippen Jr. and Austin Crowley, they're being counted on for minutes next year. I mean, can you imagine rolling it out the same thing this time next year?
No.
That'll be something interesting to look at. Now, let's just take this one step further and we're operating under the assumption that for just the purposes of this conversation that Bryce Drew was fired. I'm not asking for a big board because that's just impossible to do right now. What I will ask is this, given the situation right now, what type of coach do you think you can draw from? Are you hoping for that, that Missouri Valley coach that has a big run type of deal? Would an established guy be interested in coming here? Would a big name be interested in coming in here? What kind of viability does this program have with Bryce Drew as no longer the head coach?
Well, that's the question to me, because do you remember when they were getting rid of Kevin and going after whoever the next coach was, and we didn't know at the time? And what I heard was that, Vanderbilt realizes it's a sleeping giant and it's been awakened and they're ready to get after it and blah, blah, blah. Well, all they did, they won a bidding war for Bryce. And then what else did they do?
I don't understand the question.
Well, here's my point. There was a big private to-do about, yeah, okay, we realize we can do better, that the ceiling is huge, and they went out and they won a bidding war to get Bryce Drew, but there was talk of facilities and stuff like that, and they did nothing. They didn't do anything. I mean, I don't know what they did in the last 3 years to help men's basketball at all. There may be something that I'm not aware of, but they didn't do anything that I know of. And here's what I'm getting at. Coaches talk. I don't think that necessarily if they had to move on with Bryce Drew, there's some talk of, well, what do you do with this and that, the Garland injury? I think most coaches who were achievers are going to look at that and say, well, they went 0-19. That's not a thing that I look at and say that should be sort of an obstacle, because when you lose every game in the league and you still had at least one McDonald's All-American and another really good freshman and some other kids that were high 3 and 4 star recruits, they were not completely bereft of talent, at least in the eyes of the recruiting analysts. Now, maybe those guys were wrong, but that's going to be some of the perception. My question is, how much did the fact that Vanderbilt sat there and gave them zero support factor in? How much is that out there in the coaching community? How much will that hamper them? Because I think that the firing a coach 0-19, I don't see that as big of a problem 3 years in. I see the problem as they have been on the front page of the papers for the wrong reasons in terms of athletic commitment. And with the AD being in this learning phase and trying to figure out and setting strategic plans, and part of that being, we're going to get everything on the table and talk to people and make decisions. In light of what's happened, are you prepared to accelerate that? That's my biggest question. If they make a change, isn't how you explain getting rid of this coach. It's how you explain what you have done or haven't done the last 3 years, and not to mention the a good bit of the decade before that. And here's the thing. I wonder, this job cannot be as attractive based on that as it was 3 years ago, because if they were behind on facilities then, not to mention you're coming off an 0-19 season, they've just fallen further behind than they did 3 years ago. I can't think this is a better job than it was then. That's really my question, is how attractive is this to other coaches? It only takes one. I suspect they will throw enough money at somebody if they make the change where maybe it doesn't matter, but maybe it does. I don't know.
I'm operating under the hope, or not the assumption, but the hope that this is a new day in Vanderbilt athletics with Malcolm Turner. Now, I know we're in the information gathering phase, which may have to be accelerated a little bit. Maybe, we'll see. That's his decision. But I'm operating under the assumption that things are going to be different under him. And I'm only partially serious about that. That the powers that be that are going to do what they basically said, that they got his back, and that there's these commitments. And of course, you told us not so long ago that there were some things behind the scenes that we can't really talk about. I don't know them, that lend itself to make you believe that the future athletically with facilities and the pen letter by Malcolm Turner, that they're serious about this. And then if they are serious about that, then I think that becomes much more attractive, even if they don't, a head coach doesn't have it the day they walk in. The promise of those things could elevate the level of coach you could attract.
Yeah, and I think those are all true. But it's kind of like, let's say that Bryce Drew is in Malcolm Turner's office and he's saying, hey, if I get another year or two, this is what we'll do and that's what we'll do and this is why we didn't succeed and whatever. If you're Malcolm, are you going to listen to that more? Or are you going to look more at, okay, it's really not what you say, it's what you've done, it's your track record. My question is, are coaches going to judge them likewise? And I think that's a fair question.
All right, so I want to do a little game real quick. I'm going to be Malcolm Turner, and I want you to be Bryce Drew. And I'm only going to ask you one question. Bryce, I'm not listening to the media. I'm not reading message boards. I'm not listening to the chancellor. You have my ear, you and you alone. There's nobody in here. The decision is mine on to whether or not we go forward with you as my head coach. Bryce, tell me, why should I have you as my head coach next year?
Well, Malcolm, This season was a disaster, was unacceptable. I'm at least as embarrassed as you are, if not more. I look back and we made mistakes. We should have never dwelt on the Darius Garland thing as long as we did. Our offense did not suit our personnel. We should have changed the offense to something more structured where we ran plays and got shooters open. I didn't think that we gave the defensive intensity that we should have given at times. I should have sat Simi Shatu on the bench before I did. There's no way I should have rolled him out every game to start because it sent a bad message. I did not always know the right buttons to push. I messed some things up. As I mess things up, it caused other things to snowball. And I own all that. I want your help or a consultant's help or whoever, and come into practice like Vanderbilt did with Kevin Stallings a few years ago and say, what are the holes in your personality and your leadership style that need to be amended? I want a consultant to look at our offense and give me the brutal truth. What should you do differently? Will it work at a place like Vanderbilt? Everything is on the table for me in the next few months as we get ready for next season. I want us to win more than I want to stick to my way. I really want the chance to do that. I love it here. My family loves it here. I'd like to stay here a long time. But I know that people are tired of hearing the sunny side up on everything. I'm willing to change that too. If you will let me stay another year, I would like to earn your trust. I would like to have your help. How do I fix this? And then once we get through that part of the conversation, I'd say, oh, by the way, here's some things we need with some facilities. Can you give me the idea of what you're thinking? But I would leave with all that other stuff first before I got into anything that had to do with anything other than me.
All right, Drew, I appreciate your candid answers. I just have one more question. You mentioned a lot of things that you didn't do or wish you had or should have done, and you recognize that sitting here in my office. My question is, why didn't you do them?
I don't have a good answer for you.
You're not inspiring me to want to bring you back, with that answer.
Malcolm, I went 0-19. There's not a lot to say. I'm laughing at your question. I don't mean to make fun of them at all. I think I have so much respect for them as people. I don't think they are as bad coaches as they have looked this year. But my goodness, 0-19 that's another universe.
No, we're just painting a hypothetical picture of what that conversation could be like. That's all. Of course, you're not verbally or personally attacking any of those guys. Just trying to paint a picture there. And I think it was interesting. What else you got?
All for Vandy says, what do you think the ceiling is for football, men's basketball, women's basketball, given the right AD and coaches?
Ceiling start with football. We're not just talking about this year, I would assume. Without a massive facilities upgrade, I think our ceiling is, a consistent 7-5, which I think would be okay with almost all Vanderbilt fans. It's not a pipe dream. We've gone 6-6 in 2 of the last 3 years, but 7-5 is a lot different, and I think they could certainly get that with facilities upgrades. I think it's worth a win and a half a year over the long haul. You become a team that, if you continue to recruit well and attract the type of cats that we haven't been getting because of the facilities. I could see this team winning 8-9 games a year. Why not? Tell me why not.
Hoops.
Man, that's so difficult, Chris. And that's so difficult because of the situation that we find ourselves in. I've seen us, come out and have some spectacular seasons as well. I think with the right facilities, the right upgrades as far as that goes, I think this is a team that could consistently find themselves, a 22-win team, 23-win team, winning, making the tournament 2 out of every 3 years, and once every 6 or 7 years, maybe winning an SEC tournament.
Let's see, 2 really burning questions here. Reagan 4VU says, now that Bruno has graduated, who will be the sexiest student-athlete's dad at Vanderbilt?
Oh, Sensei, by far it is you, sir. There can be no one sexier than Daddy Reagan. Kidding me? That's a trick question.
I think they should just retire that trophy.
I love that guy, man. He's good people.
Yes, he is. All right, I'm going to have to figure out a way to ask this and keep our clean rating on the podcast. If you saw Dumb and Dumber, you know the phrase, but Baseball Bros says, how often do people yell, kick his you-know-what Seabass to you?
I have heard it at least once before. I will tell you that. I get that sometimes on the show because I'm not overly worried about my, squeaky image or whatever, clean rating. Not too worried about mine. So it gets a little risque from time to time. So I'd say I get that probably about once a month on my show, to be honest with you.
I bet you have a field day with that.
Oh, man, I do. They're all insane. I love them.
Hey, thanks for joining us, man. I'm sorry about your cold. I wouldn't want to be you this week, having to listen to you. But
man, it is all gravy, my friend. I appreciate it. My pleasure.
Where can people find you on Twitter? Where can they find your show online?
You can find me at Cheap Seats Bass on Twitter, and find me online at WNWS.com. And if you're in Jackson, at 101.5 FM. And dadgum, anchor down, baby. Go Doors.
He's Seabass. I'm Chris Lee. Thanks for listening to the Vandy Sports Podcast. More episodes to come. We should have one Friday with Corey Chavis, so give that one a listen.